Hello, good morning. It is about 11:30 on May 18, 2021. As I had said previously, that I understand I had started making videos and posting them on YouTube a year ago yesterday, and that I had an intention of following up on what I've done over the last year. I am mindful that twice in the last year, when I was making those videos and posting them, at various times my access to my own YouTube account was taken from me. I understand that at least in one instance that I believe I can verify, it was used for the campaign financing of somebody else's electoral campaign. They ended up getting elected. But at the same time, there was another time frame during which I was not able to access it and had to wait for a period of time before I could access it again. So there is a period of several days where there is a very substantial gap in terms of me being able to post during that time frame as well. I'm going to deliver on that to the best of my ability within the next year and try to go back through what I've already put out into the public realm and then try to adjust as necessary. One of the things I want to start off by saying is that in 2017, I followed up on what I had began in 2016, which was a formal request for an investigation by Congress of illegal activities that I believed were directly connected to threats to life, including threats of life that were actually delivered against political opposition in other countries. And that it had a material impact on what was going on in this country, the United States, especially in regards to the capacity for political opposition to be able to engage through a constitutional process in order to have their grievances met and also to be able to find redress, as well as other kinds of political participation. In the course of doing this, of thoroughly investigating the Constitution, policy, of being in different contexts, I have changed some of my perspectives, some of what would have otherwise been considered political convictions. I'm not the kind of person that believes it's necessarily a character flaw or demonstrative of some sort of bad faith for one to change their political perspective as they gain practical experience. I actually think it's a sign of maturation and would be actually hopeful if other people would be honest about these matters. What I do have a problem with, however, is false paradigms of confidentiality that are really about succumbing to attempts at extortion or blackmail in covering up for efforts to try to coerce people into acquiescing to crime or participation in the infiltration of or by organized crime into government processes, including in manners that dispossess us of our access to ordinary political process or what would be more organic or natural or preferred methods for having our needs met, including local organizing or some form of organizing that doesn't need formal governmental intervention. These are the kinds of organizing that I had a nascent participation in over the course of the last 5 years, but then in various manners and in various capacities experienced reprisal personally and was dispossessed several times, recurrently, over and over again, of even the most basic participation in the most basic political process. I'm a political person. It's important to be able to engage with people, to engage discourse with people, to discuss policy, to discuss differences, to debate, to come to a decision, to take action, to be able to follow through on a conviction even despite opposition, or to be in that very, and sometimes meaningful position of changing my own stance in order to address the material need and to understand that it has allowed for something to open up that benefits me and other people. These are the kinds of intrinsic values that are part of where I come from, regardless of how it factors into a census survey or how it looks in a patient history. So I'm going to respond directly to things that were posted yesterday and then follow up on something that was posted today, being mindful of the time frame I'm in now and what the intentions are moving forward at this period of time. One of the things I did beginning in 2017 was engage a formal process of trying to go through the court system in order to get my grievances addressed and to order to actually find some manner in which to address what had been my experiences of either witnessing serious crime or being put in a position where I understood I was being extorted into cooperation with crime. And during this time, I was denied any actual legal representation. I was presumably offered legal representation while I was on site at what was alleged to be a medical treatment facility, but that person never followed up with me. And after that, I was never even allowed to talk to somebody that identified themselves as a lawyer or practitioner of the law in any way, shape, or form. So I've had to pursue this pro se. One of the problems I've been having is I believe that there is some form of pseudo-ritual that Texas engages, where it takes specific kinds of women and puts them into very elaborate and very tormenting legal scenarios where the odds are significantly stacked against them and compels them to represent themselves pro se. I've witnessed this directly with one other woman, but I also knew about this as occurring to two other women, including one who had been a former attorney prior to my internment at what was alleged to be a medical facility. I believe that this is some sort of secret society, unconstitutional process. And in the course of that, the pro se filings or the pro se responses provided by these women, outside, by the way, of a context of being in an institutional setting, like an actual psychiatric center or a prison or a jail, have been used by others, including members of the legal community, including lawyers with very, very high profile positions, as part of other schemes, and that there are actual state operators or people that have the actual positions within the state's governmental system that also use it to their advantage. And meanwhile, what happens to us? There's another context under which I believe I have watched as women who are trafficked through alleged homeless service provisions are used in a comparable manner. And my major concern is that the intention is that the women that are so trafficked are expected to be dead within a period of time. And that's why there has yet to be any case brought in consideration of the situation that we've experienced or on our behalf. It's somebody just accommodated somebody's tendency to develop a financial paradigm based upon trafficking specific kinds of women in specific contexts at specific times in order to set up a benchmarking strategy based upon what she does, and that there is some sort of sadistic or prurient urge or enticement that is met by people that participate in this on a particular level that for whatever reason has been allowed to supplant actual application of the Constitution or adherence to the duties of public officers, including members of the police force or law enforcement. And so in this course, I have had to go with the materials I've been able to acquire on my own, especially since the onset of COVID-19, where the publicly accessible legal libraries that were previously publicly accessible are now no longer accessible. Even the public library downtown that has the old legal books that have the actual formal motions and decisions from cases, that's closed off. You're not allowed on site to go into the library to check out the reference materials. So I have to go with whatever is available online, and I've already noticed, especially in the last 6 to 7 months, how the electronic records have been intentionally altered in order to try to not only, I believe, visit psychological torture on people, but to try to contrive false paradigms that somebody else is using for fake finance scenarios. And so, in the course of this, I'm still attempting to proceed through an actual official process of the law, of a constitutional process through the court system. And one of the things I believe has happened, especially in the last 10 years, is that there are people that understand the balancing of the three branches of government and how actions that are taken by one branch of government impact the other two and vice versa. And in the course of that, particular kinds of political priorities have allowed for the presentation of certain cases to make it to actual trial, including jury trial, but also trial before an impaneled court, including an appellate court, including in consideration of very significant constitutional issues that have created a specific kind of trajectory basing the judicial capital of the country and others that are connected to that particular system of jurisprudence throughout the world to a specific kind of trajectory or a mentality that has exposed very significant deficiencies in other areas of constitutional law. And part of what we're dealing with right now is very significant defaults when it comes to balancing out the need to apply the full Constitution. This is something that's actually been mentioned before. There are opinions that have been presented at the Supreme Court level that actually discuss this specifically. This understanding of prioritizing or identifying a particular constitutional issue while allowing for a violation of another constitutional issue to go unaddressed has a long-term consequence. And I believe that's what we're dealing with now. How much of that is about the will of the people, allowing for a political course of action that brings up necessarily traditional arguments of the concept of the tyranny of the majority, for instance, and or how much of that is actually about the infiltration of organized crime, deliberately and intentionally skewing political priorities in order to sabotage very important elements of the government when it comes to a foundation in various areas of the Constitution. These are questions that are still unfolding. I particularly see it from a position that identifies it at a understanding that the greatest serious deficiency that we're experiencing has to do with very fundamental rights that appropriately identify crime and culpability and apply appropriate accountability measures. And I will say blatantly and completely honestly that the primary reason for this is one of self-interest. That I believe it's my country, I believe in my people, and I don't want to be in a situation where my people and my country are allowed to be slandered and misrepresented either internally or to the rest of the world. Because those that somehow have been allowed to strong-arm themselves into positions where they claim they're representing the people have put us in the worst characterization of a particular perspective possible. I believe in debate. As a matter of fact, there's something missing from my life personally when I'm not met with debate. It keeps me sharp. It keeps me alert. It keeps me stimulated. It lets me know somebody took me seriously enough to actually invest time and energy in critiquing me, even if I don't agree. And I haven't had that. I haven't had anything close to that for going on 4 or 5 years. I've had to be self-generating. But in the course of that, what I have seen is a sort of vapidity in what is allowed to be a sort of combat between individuals that allege themselves to be in civilian leadership roles, while we have very, very significant problems with abuse of what should have been the methods of protection and self-protection available to us in this country. This has very significant implications, including in the realms of the most vulnerable, people that need to have access to homeless providers or assistance with being homeless, people that have experienced domestic violence, people that actually have a physical illness or have experienced severe psychological trauma, up to and including the trauma that comes with being visited upon by significant political reprisal, including political reprisal that uses torture. These are all very significant deficiencies, and tactically, as well as strategically, I understand the best way that we can try to pursue a fortification of ourselves while we seek to change the material conditions is to affirm our understanding of the value of our investment in constitutional law, not only as a theory, but as praxis. And so that's why I maintain this course. I understand, and by the actual rules of evidentiary procedure, the things I've done have been procedurally incorrect. I understand that I have said or done things at certain times, especially in identification of people that would otherwise be identified as professionals or even office holders when it comes to either the judicial system or the other branches of government, that I've acted in ways that might be considered unprofessional. But I also understand I'm somebody that has been tortured for a protracted period of time in order to try to compel me to engage in and cooperate with acts of organized crime. And thus far, I've received no support from those that would otherwise be considered people to whom one would accord professional consideration. The question becomes one of, well, what profession do we speak of? Because I know the one that I've been repeatedly exposed to as being the option somebody else chose for me. And I have said I am not interested. There are other things I'm interested in. There are other things I should have been allowed to make choices to engage in, and been provided with support and a structure for accountability. If you do not identify yourself within a chain of command and provide me with a means by which to understand my own responsibilities in that chain of command, then there's nobody in command. This is a very significant problem. I have no problem saying who I am and where I stand. Why can I not be requited? This is a very serious situation. But at the same time, I want to honor what I had already spoken about in the videos that I presented last year. So I'm going to shut this one down and make another one.